Okay, hi everyone. So I don't forget, let's go to the Cyber Campus, and I don't see that open. I should be Cyber Campus should pop up immediately. So make sure that that's open. Let me go to Cyber Campus and close that and go to Zoom and share screen. And there's Cyber Campus. Okay. And so to attendance in week 5 and add, and the smart attendance number is 244. 244 is your smart attendance number. So 244, put that in the chat. There you go. And okay, so let's get to the exercise that I distributed for us last week to prepare. And so let's go over it a little more closely. And let me go to the share screen and to the Indian removal role play. Yay! So you all had this document. You all had this file that I sent you. So Indian removal role play, problems to consider. The year is 1830. There is a bill before the United States Congress that would provide $500,000 to move all Indians now living east of the Mississippi River to Indian Territory, what is now called Oklahoma, west of the Mississippi River. The Indians would be given permanent title to this land. The money would pay the Indians for any improvements made on the land in the east where they're now living. It would also cover the expenses of their transportation and for a year in their new homes in Indian Territory. Sounds convenient. The U.S. Congress has decided to hold hearings on this bill, and you are invited to give testimony. So you're each going to give testimony and to question other individuals, other groups testifying. Who will give testimony. The main question for discussion is, should all Indians living east of the Mississippi River be moved by force if necessary west of the Mississippi River to Indian Territory? And questions for each of the 5 groups. You were all signed to 5 groups, remember? Please open those files. You're going to need those files, right? Do you support the Indian removal bill? This bill to move the Indians. What questions do you have for members of the other groups that will be in attendance in this congressional hearing? So this is a congressional hearing, and the Black Seminoles, the Cherokee, the planters and farmers, the Jackson administration, and the missionaries and reformers are all going to be testifying as to whether or not they support the Indian removal bill. What will you do if Congress passes this bill? What will you do if Congress does not pass this bill? And so let's go through those 5 separate files and go to screen share. And I think you can see my screen. So planters and planters and farmers. Okay, so I have to move this around a bit, and I have to redo the screen share. Okay, so planters and farmers. So I think you can see that. So you have that file. So please, so there's a song here. All I ask in this creation is a pretty little wife and a big plantation way up yonder in the Cherokee Nation. It's a song. That's part of a song sung. People like you sing as you wait for the Cherokee to be kicked out of Georgia. Then you and your family can move in. Some of you are poor farmers. You live on the worst land in Georgia and other parts of the South. The big plantation owners, the big planters who own lots of slaves, right? I mean, most people who are farmers in the South do not own slaves. Slaves are a very expensive item to own. So only rich farmers have slaves. The big plantation owners, with all of their cotton and slaves, take up the best land and leave you the scraps. You've heard that the Cherokee land in Georgia is some of the most fertile land in the country. Best yet, the government of Georgia is having a lottery to see that even poor farmers like you will have an equal shot at getting good land. One of the reasons why you voted for Andy Jackson for president, and by the way, Andy Jackson was Donald Trump's favorite president. Donald Trump had a big picture of Andrew Jackson, a portrait of Andrew Jackson posted in his Oval Office. He declared Andrew Jackson was his favorite president. One of the reasons you voted for Andy Jackson for president is because you knew he was an Indian fighter who beat the Creeks in a war and then took their land away from them. That's your kind of president. Woo! The Cherokee are farmers too. They grow corn, wheat, and cotton. If you're lucky, you'll be able to move onto land with the crops already planted and the farmhouse already built. Others of you aren't quite as poor. You have some land and grow corn and raise hogs, but you too would like to move on to better land. And some of you are big plantation owners who grow cotton on your land and own many slaves. You live in Georgia near the coast. The problem is that cotton exhausts the soil, so that after a number of years, your land is not as productive as it once was. You need new land with soil that hasn't been used to grow cotton for years and years. As of now, the Cherokee are living on the land that rightfully belongs to the state of Georgia. The Georgia legislature recently voted to take over that land, divide it up so that whites like you could move onto it. That's a great law, but some people in Congress and around the country want to stop you from taking this territory from the Cherokee. What's the problem? There is a place set aside for the Cherokee and other Indians west of the Mississippi River. They belong with their own kind, right? Remember, the whole country, no, the whole world depends on cotton. Your plantation and plantations like yours are what keep this country strong and productive. But you have another big problem. In Florida, many escaped slaves live side by side with the Seminole Indians. Slaves throughout the South know about this haven for runaways. In fact, sometimes the Seminoles and escaped slaves raid plantations, burn them down, and free the slaves. You won't stand for this. The Seminole communities must be destroyed and the Indians shipped off to Indian territory along with the Cherokee. As for the escaped slaves who live with them, they need to be recaptured and either returned to their rightful owners or put up for sale. There's also some good land in Florida that you might want to move on to once the Seminoles are gone, okay? And so let's look at the other files as well and go here and open this up. And what about the Cherokee? Let's see what the Cherokee have to say. So let me move this around and then stop share and then go share screen and Cherokee and go here. And there's the Cherokee file. And your people have lived for centuries in the area the whites call Georgia, named after King George. This is your land, and times you've had to fight to keep it. You've had a hard time with whites. Ever since they began settling in Georgia, they have continued to push west, plowing the land, growing cotton and other crops. Long ago, as early as 1785, the Cherokee Nation won the right to their land by a treaty with the United States government. The United States recognized the Cherokee people as part of an independent country and not subject to the laws of the United States. After the U.S. Constitution was approved, the U.S. government signed another treaty with the Cherokee in 1791 when George Washington was president. Article 7 of the Hopewell Treaty said, the United States solemnly guaranteed to the Cherokee Nation all their lands not hereby ceded. In other words, the U.S. government agreed not to push the Cherokee out of the land where they are living. But now the U.S. government is about to break its own treaty and steal your land. Many whites have already bribed and tricked some of your people out of their land. The whites say they needed to grow cotton and other crops, and miners have been trespassing in the foothills looking for and mining gold. The whites say that you have no right to land and that you're savages. Last year in December 1829, the state of Georgia passed a law saying that you are under their control and must obey their laws, their wishes, the laws of Georgia. This new law forbids anyone with any Cherokee blood from testifying in court or protesting the plans to move you out of your land. But you didn't vote for this Georgia government. And besides, you have a treaty with the federal government that says you are citizens of an independent country. When the US government made a treaty with you, that proved you are a nation. The Cherokee are one of the 5 civilized tribes, quote unquote. It was the whites themselves who taught you much of this civilization. You have well-cultivated farms. By 1826, members of your Cherokee Nation owned 22,000 head of cattle, 7,600 horses, 3,000 plows, 2,500 spinning wheels, 10 sawmills, and 18 schools. Like Southern whites, some of you also own black slaves, just like Southern whites did. In 1821, Sequoyah, a brilliant Cherokee Indian, invented an 85-character alphabet, and now most Cherokee can read and write. It said that more Cherokee people are literate than are whites in Georgia. You even have a newspaper, the Cherokee Phoenix. You've adopted a written constitution very similar to that of the United States. Many of your leaders attend white schools in the East. Even by the white man's standards, you are as civilized as they are, if not more so. But still they want to kick you off your land and move you to a place west of the Mississippi River, a place you've never even seen. You must continue to argue your case if you are to survive as a people. And what about the Jackson administration? This is the government of the United States under Andrew Jackson. And I think you can see that, but let me share it again just to make sure that you can see it. And Andrew Jackson administration. And it states here, I think you can see that. Let me screen share it again just to make sure you can see it. That's a Cherokee. That's not that loud. Second, share screen, stop share, and share. Just a second, let me find that file. Sure, it's open. And share. Okay, share. Just a second, trying to find the file. I think you can see that. It says can you see the Andrew Jackson administration file there? You're the president of the United States. You must deal with a serious problem in the state of Georgia. This past December, remember, there was always this tension about slavery and the powers of the central government going way back to the founding of the United States Constitution, right? The South wants to keep their property and protect their property in the form of enslaved peoples. The South also wants to do lots of business and trade with Britain because Britain buys much of their cotton, because Britain, of course, is one of the major industrial powers emerging at this time. And so the South wants to keep good relations with Britain. They want to continue to sell lots of cotton to Britain. In return, Britain wants to be able to export its own manufacturers and its own products to the United States. But northern merchants and northern manufacturers particularly are complaining because they want protection by the US federal government to block imports from Britain into the United States so that they can be protected to build up their own industry, their own businesses, their own factories, their own economy. So the Southern planters want low tariffs on British imports. The Northern emerging industrialists want higher tariffs on British imports so that they can develop their own factories and their own industries against competition from Great Britain. So you have a tension there between the North and South already. The South is always complaining. Even at this time, the South is beginning to grumble about maybe leaving the United States and overriding the powers of the central government in terms of its economic policies. So here you're Andrew Jackson. You are a hero, a war hero. You beat the British in a battle in the War of 1812 in New Orleans. At the end of the War of 1812, you're the last American president who grew up, who was born under a British colony while the United States was still a colony. You're the last person who was born and raised under the British, old British Empire. You're the president of the United States. You must deal with a serious problem. And you own slaves, by the way. You own slaves. You're from Tennessee and you own slaves. You must deal with a serious problem in the state of Georgia. This past December in 1829, the state of government said all land belonging to the Cherokee Nation would from then on belong to Georgia. The Cherokee would have no title to their land, and anyone with Cherokee blood wouldn't even have the right to testify in court. The Georgians want the Cherokee removed by force if necessary west of the Mississippi River. They support the Indian Removal Act now before Congress. There is a place called Oklahoma set aside for all the Indians in the East, including the Cherokee. Personally, you agree that Georgia has a right to make whatever laws they want, but the Cherokee have treaties signed by the US government guaranteeing them their land forever. Of course, you personally never signed any of these treaties. The previous presidents did. You're getting a lot of pressure on this one. On the one hand, white missionaries and lots of Northerners say that Georgia's violating Cherokee rights. Cherokee supporters point out that the Indians have done everything they can to become like civilized white people. They invented an alphabet, they started a newspaper, they wrote a constitution, started farms, and even wear white people's clothes. Many church groups supported your election in 1828, and you want their support when you run for re-election in 1832. On the other hand, a lot of farmers and plantation owners would like to get on that good Cherokee land. Recently, gold was discovered on Cherokee territory, and gold seekers are already starting to sneak onto their land. Your main base of support was in the South, especially from poor and medium-sized farmers, right? It was under the Jackson administration that it was finally established as a fundamental principle in the United States that all white men, regardless of whether or not they had money or land, were able to vote in elections. This was established under the Jackson administration, that all white men, regardless of poor or rich, have the right to vote. Not, of course, women, and not, of course, African-American enslaved people or Indians, but all white men, even if they had no money or had the right to vote. And that, of course, was a main source of your support, political support. From your standpoint, you have to look after the welfare of the whole country. The main crop in the South is cotton. It's a crucial crop to the prosperity of the slave-owning South and the new cloth factories of the North, because, you know, also the United States is making textile cloth factories in the early Industrial Revolution. Cotton grown with slave labor brings in tremendous profits to slave owners, and you're a slave owner yourself, so you understand their concerns. There is excellent land being taken up by the Cherokee, as well as some of the other Indian tribes in the region, the Creeks, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Seminole, though some of these have already moved west. This land could be used to grow cotton for the world. The exports of cotton to England and other countries are vital to the health of the economy. Cotton sent north is building up young industries, and you can see there's a great potential for manufacturing in the North. The Seminole Indians who live in Florida represent a special problem. For years, they have taken in escaped slaves from southern plantations. Sometimes they've even raided plantations in order to free slaves. They are a threat to the whole plantation system in the South. A number of years ago, you ordered the US military to attack the Seminoles in Florida and had their farms burned. The proposed Indian Removal Act would get rid of the Seminoles forever by moving them to Indian territory. The escaped slaves living with them would then be taken away from them and sold. Okay, so, and then we go back to the next list here, and we click on Black Seminoles. Let's click on Black Seminoles, Black Seminoles. And so let me get this set up here, get this out of the way. And so here, do this, okay, Black Seminoles, you can see, stop share, and then we go share screen here. Okay, Black Seminoles, and get this out of the way. You are Black and you are Indian, members of the Seminole people in Florida. You are descended from enslaved Africans who ran away from British plantations in Georgia over 100 years ago and came to settle with Indians who left their lands farther north. This was before the United States was even a country. You are a free person. Some of the Black people who live in Seminole communities ran away from slavery in the last few years. Others were brought from white slave owners by Seminoles, were bought. These people are still called slaves, but they're not treated as slaves. They can marry anyone, can't be sold away from their families, can travel where they want, have their own land, and carry guns. But every year they must pay part of their crops to other Seminoles as a kind of tax. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 is now being considered by the US Congress. It calls for all Indians east of the Mississippi River to be forced off their lands and moved to a place called Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River. Full-blooded Seminoles would be moved, but for you, a Black Seminole, they would make you a slave and sell you in one of the southern slave markets. You would be forever separated from your community, your friends, your family. You will never allow this to happen. The white plantation owners in Georgia and throughout the South are threatened by the Indians, free Blacks, and escaped slaves living peacefully side by side. They know that their slaves hear about these Seminole communities and want to run away to join them. The Seminole communities are a kind of symbol of freedom to enslaved Black people throughout the South. In the past, your people have attacked plantations and freed the slaves on those plantations and brought them to Florida to live with you and become Seminoles. The whites also want to steal your land so they can grow their cotton with slave labor. President Andrew Jackson is one of the biggest slaveholders in Tennessee. Some years ago, when he was a general in the army, he ordered his troops to attack your people and destroy your farms and homes. You know that in this debate about Indian removal, he is not on your side. He also wants to move to the other Indian nations in the Southeast, especially the Cherokee. You don't have much to do with the Cherokee. You know they own large numbers of Black slaves, though they say that they treat them better than do the white plantation owners. But if this law passes, they will try to move them too. The United States government and the white plantation owners call the Seminoles savages. But you have farms and raise horses, cattle, hogs, and chickens. And unlike your white plantation owners, you know what freedom means. What is civilized? What is savage? And finally, the last group. So stop share, and we go to share screen, and go back to this list here, share, and we click on the missionaries and reformers. So these are the missionaries who spread Christianity and who And let's see what they have to say, missionaries and reformers. And so some of you are white Christian missionaries who live amongst the Cherokee people or once did. You are not plantation owners, gold prospectors, bankers, or military people. You are simply individuals who want to preach the word of God and do what's right. You are of many different Christian denominations. At great sacrifice, you moved away from the comfort of civilization to go live in much more difficult conditions among the Indians. You believe that the Cherokee people have made great progress advancing towards civilization. According to a resolution your missionary group recently passed, some Cherokee families have risen to a level with the white people of the United States. Most Cherokee now wear clothes like white people and have given up their original Indian dress. Women wear decent gowns. They cover their bodies from neck to feet. Before, the women had to do the hard work of tending the corn using hoes. Now the men do the farming with plows. They are a much more industrious people and own more property and better houses than in the past. Slowly, more are becoming Christians and thankfully are forgetting their old Indian superstitions. As your resolution points out, ancient traditions are fading from memory and can scarcely be collected. When the whites came upon the Cherokee, the Indians were in a purely savage state, but this is no longer the case. Many individuals and whites are beginning to intermix. This is good as it brings Indians in closer contact with civilization. You don't know a single Cherokee who wants to leave home and go west across the Mississippi River. As your resolution states, there is an overwhelming torrent of national feeling and opposition to removal. And you want to know, you live with these people. You are reluctant to take sides in political arguments, but you have to bear witness to what you see and hear. Those of you who live in the North have read the writings of missionaries who live amongst the Cherokee. They don't want to steal the Cherokee land, so they have no reason to lie. Senator Theodore Frelinghuysen from New Jersey has spoken eloquently about the Cherokee situation. He calls the Cherokee the first lords of the soil. The senator puts himself in the Indian's position and asks, if I use my land for hunting, may another take it because he needs it for agriculture? It's true that the richest Cherokee, about 10%, owns some black slaves. Some of you are abolitionists who want all slavery to end and don't approve of this. However, almost everyone who has ever traveled in Cherokee territory agrees that the Cherokee do not treat their slaves as harshly as the whites treat theirs. Most slaves in Cherokee country have some rights, and individuals and families are almost never sold away from each other. But slavery is slavery, and some of you don't approve of any slavery. Okay, so we're now going to have a congressional testimony, and we will, I want you to role play, right? So I want you really to get into your position. And, you know, keep in mind, you know who wins this debate. And so Andrew Jackson administration must have been very persuasive. And there was countervailing, conflicting pressures on the Jackson administration from, of course, the plantation owners and the planters. You saw in that statement we made earlier about how Andrew Jackson highlighted it was necessary to move into this territory because this territory needs to be strengthened. And it needs to be strengthened because, well, he doesn't come out and say it. I think you can see this, right? Let me just make sure you can. He says, if we don't populate and industrialize and develop the South, it could be open to the Spanish or the French or the British coming back. I already told you how, you know, and it's not really mentioned here, but, you know, all American students learn about how the South is already complaining about being dominated by the North. And they don't want the US government to restrict their economic activities. They do not support the imposition of tariffs on British imports because they rely upon Britain being open to exports from the United States in the form of cotton so that they can sell their cotton to the British. And they sell a lot of cotton to the British, right? So there's all these conflicting pressures on Jackson, and there was already a crisis at one point where, you know, the state of South Carolina I think it was in the 1820s when Jackson was president, passed the resolution saying that it can override the federal government laws, that the laws of South Carolina can nullify federal central government laws when the South Carolinian government decides to do so. And Andrew Jackson actually had to threaten to send the Army, the US Army, into South Carolina. So, of course, this is 40 years before the Civil War starts, less than 40 years before the Civil War begins in 1860, 1861. But there's already conflict and threats of war and complaints. And so if you're Andrew Jackson, how are you going to try to placate these different conflicting pressures from the northern industrialists, from the southern planters? One way to make the southern people happy is to say, well, you can take the land from the Indians. If you stay in the United States, it's a good thing because we're going to let you take the land from the Indians. And that will placate the Southerners for a while. So we're now going to have a congressional meeting, but first I've got to create those 5 breakout rooms, and I'm going to let you choose the room to join, but I have to rename them. So okay, so please join your group that you were assigned to on Wednesday last week. So I opened the room, so please join the group that you were assigned to on Wednesday.
Professor,
Yeah.
I wasn't on the last Wednesday where I can join.
Okay, I will wait till we're done here, and then I will sign you. Okay. Everybody, hurry up and join. Otherwise, I'll have to assign you. Keep going. Shin Hye Bom, join a group. Ju Sang-min, join a group. No, sorry, Ju Song-min, join a group. Kim Tong-yoon, join a group. Kang Tung-un, join a group. Kang Tung-un, join your group. Kim Tong-yoon, join a group. Ju Song-min, join a group.
Professor, can I know where that I belong?
I don't
Wednesday.
that,
Sorry.
do you have the file that I sent you? I sent you the file on Wednesday. That's the group you should belong to. If you don't know, I'll send you one. Okay, the other 3 haven't joined a group, so I'll assign you to a group. So UJE, you'll be a Black Seminole. Woo! And so UJE, join the Black Seminoles, UJE. And join it. And Kim Tong-un, you are a Jackson administration. Woo! Kim Tong-yoon, I'll sign you Jackson administration. And Ju Song-min, well, who needs a member? Who needs a member? I think we'll sign you to missionaries and reformers. Yay! So UJE, okay, so I think I have to. Okay, I think I have to join Black Seminole. And no. Okay, yeah. So a Black Seminole, Black Seminole, Black Seminole, go, 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 go. And Jackson administration, I assigned somebody to join Jackson administration. Okay. And I think I assigned somebody to Northern Missionary. Okay, so let me join that group.
Hello.
Okay, so everybody's assigned to a group and you're all in your group. So who's going to speak first? And so I think you can all hear me. Well, maybe.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so let me flip a coin. Okay, everybody can hear me? Not just missionaries and reformers, because I don't think I can leave this group.
Oh, yeah, you're in our group.
Yeah, but can I leave? I can't, I don't think I can leave. All right, so.
You want to try to assign another group?
No, that's okay. That's all right. So flip a coin. The top half will be selected and it's heads. So the first person is heads and it's tails. So the second person listed in each group will speak first for that group. Okay. So that's Chung Sung Hyun will speak for missionaries and reformers. First.
있는 것 같아.
아, 네.
Plantation owners, Kim Hwan Sok will speak for plantation owners first.
안 울려요.
파일 안 열려요?
네.
네, 제가 한국말로 요약해드릴까요? 아니면?
네, 파일이 존재하지 않는다고 뜨는데요.
아, 교수님 오셨다.
So for the Cherokee, yeah, I already said plantation farmers Kim Chun Sook. For Black Seminoles, am I in that group?
오 마이 갓.
So Black Seminoles, Sheen Hae Pom will speak for Black Seminoles first.
프로페서
저
Jackson administration, Pyeon Chung Woo will speak first for the Jackson administration.
Okay.
And for missionaries and reformers, Chung Sung Hyung will speak for missionaries and reformers. Okay.
Sounds good.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, this subject seems pretty straightforward for us, so I think we're all good. So.
Okay. Okay, I will role play Speaker of the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress. And so I will preside over the hearings today. But first, let us, as we customarily do, start our day with a prayer to our Lord, asking for his guidance and wisdom in making the appropriate policies for the well-being of our country and our people. Dear Lord, we call upon you to provide us with wisdom and insight as we again meet to do the people's business in determining the future of our country's progress in the light of a world in which evil is still very prevalent. Oh Lord, provide us with insight. Provide us with the Holy Spirit and the guidance to do what is best on this topic. Oh Lord, we call upon you to guide us and give us direction. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so first let's go to the Jackson administration. So in courtesy to our beloved president, war hero Andrew Jackson. So please make a statement as to your position on these topics. Why should we remove the Indians east of the Mississippi, out west beyond the Mississippi, in contravention with previous treaties and laws adopted in decades past? And we assigned, who did we assign there? Pyeong Chung-woo. Pyeong Chung-woo.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
do you support the Indian? Of course, you're the Jackson administration. Do you support the Indian removal bill?
Yes, I support Indian removal because since we are president of the United States, we have to work for our citizen. So, and in the Cherokee land, there are a lot of gold and lots of things to earn. So we have to remove them to take a profit from the land. So I think we have to support and start the Indian removal bill.
Who would like to cross-examine or raise a question to the Jackson administration? Cherokee Nation, what do you say in response to what the Jackson administration is requesting? Cherokee.
Yes.
What is your response to the Jackson administration?
Actually, the Jackson administration implemented an Indian Removal Act to drive out the Cherokees. But however, this does not make sense from the Cherokees' point of view. This is because the reason they drive us out is because the Cherokees are living by forming their own society and following the rules. So we don't think this order should be broken. And we want to ask someone who wants to drive out the Cherokees, in what areas do people who implement this policy think we are not civilized? Isn't it for mining large ranches and minerals that will drive us out?
Well, yes, Jackson administration, what do you have to say? Anyone from the Jackson administration? We're going to vote, by the way. We're going to vote on this topic. So as to whether or not to approve the Indian removal bill. So this is and we're going to vote anonymously. You're going to vote anonymously. So you have to persuade people to your point of view. So Jackson administration, what is your response to what the Cherokee have stated? Kim Tong-yoon or Ji-won-yu, as well as Pyeong-chung-woo. What is your response? Jackson administration,
Yep.
Yeah.
what is your response?
Well, we admit that we want to drive out Turkey for the profit and the mines, but I think as official administration, we need to gather the power and officially garden as a nation, one nation.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
Okay.
add more opinion?
Yes.
I know what the Cherokee tribe said, but I think because as the leader of the state, the interests of the minority, such as Turkey, are of course important, but I think it is necessary to prioritize the interest of the majority. So I think we should remove them in our state and in the west of Mississippi, of the river. Yeah, in
Mhm.
the east, yes. Okay.
Mhm. What about the argument that Jackson administration is making that we need to solidify and unify the country of our I mean, our country is huge. I mean, the United States is a huge country, and it's not many people live there. And you know, we have these Indian nations that are recognized as separate states, separate nations, and old treaties signed in 1791, 50 years ago. This is dangerous. Because of course they can sign treaties with the British or with the French or with the Spanish as well. I mean, this is the reality that, you know, if we want to defend the United States, we have to be prepared for the dangers of other countries intervening in North America. And they're going to use the old treaties that were adopted when the United States was just beginning in 1791 to justify the intervention and interference in North America, and maybe to try to take back some of North America that they lost to us, the American people who live in the United States. What is your response to that, Cherokee?
We think it is an invasion to take away the original territory to benefit the United States, to gain their benefits. They push the Cherokees away, who are at a level where they cannot maintain a minimum human life. So we want to ask more that is it justifiable to drive the people who originally existed to the brink for the majority?
What do you say to the Jackson administration claim that you're a bunch of savages who run around hunting in the forests, and you don't really do anything with these vast resources? Yeah, supposedly you do a little farming, but you're not industrialists. You're not developing the country. You rely mostly upon the area for hunting, and you know you're not doing anything with these resources. Somebody's going to do something with those resources. And you're not doing enough. Is that not true? Is that a lie that I just is that propaganda that the planters, the plantation owners and the farmers are spreading? Cherokee? What about the plantation owners? Plantation owners, who are the plantation owners? Plantation owners and farmers are Kim Won-sok, speak for civilization. Plantation owners, you claim that you represent enlightenment, modernity, development, strengthening of our economy and of our country through your exploitation of those vast resources that are being wasted. What do you have to say, Kim Won-sok? Where's Kim Won-sok?
I'm here.
Speak, Kim Won-sok.
Oh, sorry. Give me a minute. I am.
Can somebody help Kim Won-sok, another plantation owner or farmer? Kang Tong-un, Pak Ji-un, Lee-hyun. Speak, speak for enlightenment, for development, for progress. Or Kim Won-sok if you're ready. Kang Tong-un, where are you? Kang Tong-un, speak.
Professor, can I speak?
Yes.
First, we support that the removal the Indians because we are the poor farmer and we need to mow land and crops, but already the Indian have the good land. It is actually we think it is not is unfair. We need to have an equality to getting good land like Indians. And we have another big problem that the escaped slave laid our plantations and burned them down, and they make free the slaves. So it is dangerous for us. So we think the Indians shift to Indian territory.
Okay, yeah, move them away from the borders. Move these people away from the seacoast where the British and the French and the Spanish might be able to get access to them. Move them into the interior, right? Oklahoma's in the middle of the country, right? Move them inside so that we can protect the security of the United States from the British. I mean, remember, most of the Indians fought on the side of the British against the Americans in the Independence War. Not all, but most sided with the British. And again, who created the United States? It wasn't the Indians. Who established the United States? It was white farmers. These people are the United States. They made the United States when it was created. This is a project that began and it needs to be completed. It needs to continue. Otherwise, it could be destroyed. You already had a war with the British in 1812 to 1814, 30 years after the First War, the Independence War. Who's to say they might not come back and use these Indians against us again? I mean, and by the way, this kind of language is still important today, right? I mean, this is what did the Japanese claim? They were doing a favor when they annexed Korea into the Japanese Empire. They claim that they brought civilization and enlightenment and progress to Korea that was backward and superstitious, they claim. Israeli settlers claim they made the desert bloom by taking Palestine. They made the desert bloom and brought progress and development and an advanced country and a democracy to the Palestinian lands in the Middle East, when there was little, if anything, there before, they claim. Same about South African white settlers in South Africa. What was there in Africa before the Dutch and the English came to South Africa? What was there? There were agrarian tribal societies It was Europeans who brought modernity, progress, development, industry, democracy. So this isn't just an old history. People still speak in these terms in different places, like in the Middle East. I mean, Israeli nationalists, they say the Zionists made the desert bloom like a flower blooms. They made the desert bloom. In other words, it didn't bloom before they got there. And you hear it today. I mean, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, saying, we're going to protect those Indians living in the Amazon rainforest. What are they doing there? Hunter-gathering, living their old lifestyle. We need that territory. We need those resources to make Brazil rich and strong and prosperous. We can't just let them sit there because we feel bad that the Indian way of life will be threatened. And what kind of way of life is that anyway? And there's a lot of response to that. Positive response. So this isn't just some old history. This is a recurring pattern you see around the world in different places all of the time. When rich, powerful Europeans encounter poor, weaker, non-white populations whose resources they want to take and exploit. And they say they're doing it for progress, for civilization, for modernity. And they're still doing it today in Brazil, in the Middle East. Meanwhile, you see, like we talked about earlier, you know, among the Indian populations on reservations in the United States today, there's terrible, terrible problems compared to the rest of the American population. High rates of alcoholism, drug abuse. On some Indian reservations, the life expectancy of men is about the same as it is in Somalia because of disease and drug addiction, diabetes, obesity. The poorest place in America you'll find on these Indian reservations that were originally set up after the Indians were expelled from the eastern part of the United States out west. When they expelled and continually told that they are backward, they are silly, they are dumb, they are savages, they are nothing. Remember Hollywood, the Hollywood portrayal of Indians? And you're getting that all the time into your head from the moment you're born as an Indian. Northern missionaries and reformers, what is your perspective? And that is Song Hyun Oh, I think, yeah. Song Hyun Oh. Speak for missionaries and reformers. Song Hyun Oh. There you are, Song Hyun Oh. Speak. Turn on your video screens too. I'm the only one who has my video on. Why doesn't anybody else have their video on? We're supposed to be seeing each other. I forgot to bring that up. Turn on your screens so we feel like we're all together. Don't be so shy. Song Hyun Oh. Speak, Song.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We are all children of God. Also, the Indians are children of God. So, you know, they are embracing Christianity. It means they're being civilized. We need to be generous. If we drive them out, we will lose opportunity to make them civilized. So yeah.
You're making them civilized. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Black Seminoles. Do you think that the missionaries and reformers are making you civilized? See, Black Seminoles, those are Shin He Pum. Where's Shin He Pum? Shin He Pum.
Professor, Habo's
Yeah.
mic doesn't work today, so is it okay to talk her instead?
Okay.
From the standpoint of the Black Seminoles, I think they doesn't make us civilized to the society because they just separate our family and make the community break. So it doesn't work for us. Yeah.
You know, I think another, speaking as a professor, not the Speaker of the House, you know, another theme I think that the Zinn textbook wants to highlight, because the Zinn textbook is trying to highlight patterns that appear throughout history that include patterns that relate to American history. We already talked about how you see these similar kinds of justifications being expressed for creating settler colonial societies in Palestine or South Africa and throughout North and South America, Australia, New Zealand, that the claim that you can somehow do well or do better if you belong to one of these marginalized groups by trying to pretend that you belong to that marginalized group, by becoming Christian, by wearing Western style clothing, by you know, acting and behaving like that, that's somehow going to save you, that's somehow going to preserve your people. If you try to become like the people that are oppressing you, that somehow that is an appropriate answer. And I think, you know, Zinn doesn't come out and say this in the textbook, but I think from what other left-wing activists have pointed out, this never works, because it doesn't work. It rarely works because the white dominant powers, the ruling powers in the United States or in Australia, they already view you with contempt. They think you're disgusting. They think you're ridiculous. And if you try to appeal to those ruling powers by acting like them, by looking like them, by trying to show that you want to be them, they're going to continue to view you with contempt. They will deny that you exist, and they will continue to explain, because they don't respect you. And they don't respect you because you don't respect yourself. And if you don't respect yourself, nobody's going to respect you. And you don't demonstrate that you respect yourself by trying to ape and become like the people that are oppressing you. You know, you have to, if you want true freedom and liberation, it has to be on the foundation of mutual respect. And that means you have to demonstrate, it may mean you have to demonstrate your power capability, right? You have to demonstrate that you have to be respected because you're not going away, and you'll resist. And that's a theme in the social movement scholarship, social movement literature, that social movements and resistance serves many functions, but one function it serves among the many functions is to change the view that prevails within society that marginalized people are marginalized because they're ridiculous. They're weak, ridiculous, contemptible, feckless people who are a joke. And of course, society has made them that way. But if you internalize that in your own brain, you are serving the interests of the exploiters. The exploiting dominating class has won if they can actually make you believe that you are ridiculous, that your background is sad, your culture is primitive, that your background, your culture is savage. And if they can convince you of that, they've already got you. You're done. So one of the functions of social movements is to demonstrate that you can mobilize, that you can organize, that you can resist. And sometimes these social movements can become violent, of course, like an independence movement, try to break away from a country, and that means you have to fight. And that means there's going to be a lot of suffering. And that does happen. I mean, self-determination movements, national self-determination movements are social movements, you know. So I think that's a theme in the Zinn book, that, you know, and that you saw that in the exercise on Christopher Columbus and the Taínos. By being nice to Christopher Columbus, the Taínos were not going to save themselves. right? And so you have an obligation. If you want to be respected, you have to organize and be respectable. And that means you have to organize and stand up for yourself. And if you don't do that, not only will you suffer, but you will allow the inhuman nature of the oppressor to become institutionalized as well. This is another point that the social movement theorists make. They claim that slavery was bad in the United States, not only for the Black people, obviously, but it also, it made white people mentally sick because they overly focused their identity on oppressing one group of people. And that became the main focus of their identity, rather than explore and develop the other options and opportunities and capacities that they have as people and as communities. So, to this very day, where is the poorest people of the United States located? In the South. The poorest parts of the United States are in the South, where slavery was. Because people, you know, we have to talk about this at some point, but look, in terms of social identity theory, and I've talked about this in other classes, right? Social identity theory is a body of knowledge of work in social psychology that has three fundamental principles. I want to have a positive image of myself. You want to have a positive image of yourself. We tend to self-identify with groups of people, within groups of people. And so if those in groups of people, like my family or my nation or my community, I view negatively, or I compare them with other groups and I view my group as negative, I'm going to respond in a way that might involve social creativity, trying to develop myself, maybe try to join the superior outgroup that makes me feel bad about being who I am in my in-group. Or try to change my own identity by pursuing new means of achieving status and dignity and self-respect by doing something creative, social creativity. Another option in response is social competition. Social competition is when we engage in zero-sum relationship, that your gain is my loss and my gain is your loss, and that escalates and can spiral to violence and secession and self-determination movements, right? But one of the problems with the slave-based society was that if you're white, you don't have to do anything to feel good about yourself. Because in the South, if you're born and you're white, you're automatically better than almost half the population just by being born white, and you don't have to do anything. Not to mention being better than women in terms of status. So you don't have to do anything. You just have to live. This is called traditional society, in which your status and respect that you gain in society is based upon your birth, not about what you do, not about what you achieve, not what you create, but just on where you're born and the position you're born in society. That's a traditional society where status is ascribed to you at your birth, versus a modern society in which status and respect is supposedly gained through achievement. And other people go, yeah, he's achieved a lot. He's got a PhD. He's got lots of money. He invented some new device. He invented Bitcoin and understood it, and he made lots of, woo! That's a modern society. But in Southern society, you know, you lacked incentive to do anything because you didn't have to do anything to feel good about yourself. If you're a white man, you're just born and you're better than 3/4 of the world. And so you don't have to achieve, or at least don't have the incentive to achieve, to be creative, to be an entrepreneurial businessman or businesswoman and come up with new economic market niches. And because why? I like this world that exists in. And this is true in all traditional societies, right? And traditional society never completely disappears in terms of the role of ascription. Status through being ascribed to you, status through ascription never completely disappears, right? So for example, Korea is one of the most modern societies in the world because of its history, its violent, bloody history, the war, Japanese occupation, but still to this very day, the doctor is not supposed to tell a pregnant woman the sex of the unborn baby, the fetus, because in traditional Confucian society, male boys are ascribed higher status than females. And so so they would do terrible things. They're still doing terrible things, like in India. There's been estimates that tens of millions of girls are missing in this world because they're being aborted before they're born because the parents want a boy, not a girl, and they can't afford a girl. Right? So even in the most modern societies like the United States or Korea, there's still these elements of ascription. And you see it in the United States in terms of racism, that people of color, you got a mark against you because of the founding of the United States on the basis of white settler colonialism, imperialism, and the self-justificatory rationalization in terms of perceiving self versus other that become institutionalized that create and found the United States. I mean, remember, people tend to perceive the world in a way that makes them feel good about doing whatever it is they want to do. And if you want to exploit all of these resources in North America and grow cotton and tobacco, and you know what? We can go buy slaves in Africa and bring them here. You're going to want to feel good about doing that. And you're going to say, well, we're doing good things. We're developing America. We're using these resources to make America strong and prosperous. And we're bringing civilization, and that we're teaching the Black people Christianity and blah, 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 blah. I shouldn't say blah, 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 because that's not very scientific, but they come up with propaganda, basically. And people can actually believe their own propaganda. And it becomes institutionalized. And again, you can't understand Donald Trump and his election as president unless you understand that white supremacy, it's not something that white people in America say, I'm white and I'm supreme. It's been built over 400 years through institutions founded upon this notion that started with this foundation about this principle that we're going to expel the Indians and feel good about it. And we're going to bring over Black people here, and we're going to feel good about doing that too, as slaves. And we create this system, and we vest our interest in that system, and we want to defend our system. And of course, you know, by 1860, you know, the equivalent of billions and billions of dollars are invested in slaves. People built their business models, their strategies, their plans on slavery. How are you going to abolish that? And it was really hard, and they fought a war over it. So, and again, this is not just history. This is Donald Trump, right? I mean, so let me open up another exercise here. So this is when Donald Trump was running for president, re-election, leading up 2 years ago. So here you see Donald Trump, to message of racial division and fear, crowd responds with cheers. North Carolina, he says, President Trump said, has released thousands of dangerous criminal aliens into your communities, and you see it. Mr. Trump said, the charges against these criminals include sexual assault, robbery, drugs, crime, homicide, murder. Of course, most of these aliens come from Hispanic areas and Latin American countries. Of Democrats, Mr. Trump said, your way of life is under assault by these people because the Democratic Party is seen as the party of minorities. I mean, most white people vote for Donald Trump. They voted for Donald Trump in 2016, and they voted for Donald Trump in 2020. The majority of white people. 2 months after Mr. Trump lost the last North Carolina rally, where supporters unleashed a send her back chant about a Somali American congressman that was immediately denounced as racist, the president did what the president often does. On Monday night, rather than deliver a speech tailored only to conventional topics like crucial special congressional election in North Carolina on Tuesday or about economic numbers that White House officials have been trying to tout, Mr. Trump brought his signature brand of identity politics steeped in racial division and fears of white Christian replacement to a crowd that was eager to embrace these themes. Remember, right? America was founded hundreds of years ago. Well, you can't see that. was founded hundreds of years ago, and people lived and breathed and thought and understood the world in terms of religion. So it's not a coincidence that they would try to explain their white identity in terms of Christian religion, evangelical Christianity. Evangelical Christians were Donald Trump's strongest supporters. And of course, they would deny that they're racist, right? They don't believe that they're racist, but I'm saying that there's something called systemic or structural racism that goes back to the foundation of the United States by white settlers expelling Indians, conquering Texas and Hispanic areas of North America to add to the United States, like Texas, because you have that paragraph, right, that's due tomorrow. And the Indian population as well, and coming up with justifications for doing that. They cheered loudly, urging Mr. Trump on as he talked about mass deportations, foreign refugees overrunning communities, and unproven allegations of voter fraud in California. The crowd booed on cue with every mention of Democratic enemies, all women or people of color. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who represents one of the most diverse places in America, San Francisco. Hillary Clinton, former President Barack Obama, and the group of freshman congressmen named the Squad. Democrats were branded the America-hating left, because the Squad include a couple of Muslims who Donald Trump claims are not really American. This is like college. It's like a pep rally of like-minded people. We feel safe here, said Linda Barrera, 66 from Charlotte. Obama wanted to be the global leader of the world. He felt like he knew what was best for me. Trump fixed it. Brian Kelly of Fayetteville said he felt Mr. Trump understood the people who experience most discrimination right now are us Christians. I hate this racist nonsense. It's just a political ploy, Mr. Kelly said. You can say anything you want if you're a Muslim or an atheist. The Christians are being persecuted because, keep in mind, 45% of America is not white anymore. That's a threat, right? That's perceived by many people seen as a threat. The increasing numbers of non-white proportion of the population, increasing refugees and people coming who are not Christian into America. And of course, they claim that the Democratic Party stands for dependency and making people depend upon the federal government to take care of them. We got off the Democratic plantation and switched our party to Republican to vote for Donald J. Trump. Diamond and Silk said to Cheers. The women who are both Black have risen to stardom in Mr. Trump's media orbit by lending their personality and their identity to insulating Mr. Trump against accusations of racism. So Donald Trump can always find people, Black people, that want to be like Donald Trump, that talk like Donald Trump, and Donald Trump and his supporters can point to, see, we're not racist, see? You just have to think the right way and talk the right way, and we love you. Trisha Hope, 54, was attending her 23rd rally for Mr. Trump. Miss Hope sells a book of all the president's tweets since Inauguration Day. They are history that needs to be preserved, she said, and have never been inaccurate. Miss Hope estimated that she's read every tweet about 50 times. Like Donald Trump is like a prophet. He's like a god. President Trump touched something inside me, Miss Hope said. He speaks like me. He talks like me. When the media acts like he's offending everyone, I know that's not true. Among the most popular of Mr. Trump's supporters at rallies are the Black attendees, who are frequently stopped by people asking to take photos or personally thanked by white attendees. A traveling group of about a dozen Black Trump supporters wear shirts that read, "Trump and Republicans are not racist," and have often enter the rally to cheers. Osiga Kaku, 23, a North Carolina Trump supporter who is the son of Nigerian immigrants, wore a signed hat from Vice President Mike Pence. Like his white counterparts, Mr. Kaku said he agreed with Mr. Trump's rhetoric about immigrants, including his infamous insult of African nations. Donald Trump called them shithole countries. Why do we want to allow people from shithole countries to come to America, from countries like Nigeria, Haiti, Black Africa, Haiti? He called them shithole countries in a meeting of his cabinet. The president tells things blatantly. He's rude, but he's also right, Mr. Kaku said. Can you name a white country that's a dump? He asked, although he repeated the vulgar language the president used. So can you name a white country that's a shithole? But they didn't say shithole in the news report. They substituted the word dump. So many of these people, they desperately want to assimilate into American core culture, including people of color, but many Black people, Hispanic people. Donald Trump's support among Hispanic and Black voters actually increased in 2020, November 2020, from November 2016. He got more votes from Blacks and Hispanics in 2020 than he got in 2016, indicating so many of these people, they just want to let us in, let us assimilate, please, let us, please. And Howard Zinn and his supporters say, no, you're not going to be let in. They'll find people to point to that are useful propaganda tools, but they're never going to integrate Black people fully into white society unless white society changes. So please respond to the following statement. Racism is part of America's DNA. So you're in your 5 groups, so keep you in those 5 groups. And decide if you agree with this statement, that racism is part of America's political DNA. Do you strongly agree, neutral cannot decide, disagree, strongly disagree? And go to the breakout rooms, and let's have heads as the top first person, and the first person in each group speak for each group. Do you think so join those groups, go back to your groups. Go back to your groups, and the first person in each group speak as to whether or not you think racism is part of America's political DNA, part of America's genetic composition. And I should write a statement as well. Heads is 1 through 3, and it is tails. So heads is 4, and it's tails. So I strongly disagree. Racism. Okay, so I was assigned strongly disagree. So racism is not part of American DNA because racial definitions change. Okay. All right, so who's going to speak first? And heads is 1 through 3, and it's tails. So it will be heads. And it's, okay, the Jackson administration group, Kim Tong-yoon, where does your group fit on this scale? Kim Tong-yoon, where does your group fit on this scale? Kim Tong-yoon. Kim Tong-yoon. There she is. Okay, Kim Tong-yoon from the Jackson administration. Where does your group fit on this scale? Kim Tong-yoon.
Yep.
Where did your group decide to place itself on the scale?
We decide to place the agree.
You agree. Why do you agree?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for the Americans first, but we agree with that question because the history and the structure that white man is in charge or privileged is over like hundreds of years. So it is a little bit like inherent in their DNA.
Who disagrees? Who amongst the groups disagree? Next, and it is heads, and it is plantation owners. So Kang Tong-un, where does your group fit on this scale?
I don't know other people's opinion, but my opinion is disagree.
Why?
Because when we look at the social structure of the United States and the interest between the ruling and the governed during the early founding of the United States, I don't think the racism is the political DNA of the United States because they seem to have acted hypocritical, such as discriminating against Black people and making them slaves for their benefit.
Yeah, well, what about, I mean, if America is so racist, how could the Americans elect a Black president? I mean, they elected Barack Obama in 2008 and reelected him in 2012. I mean, they elected, Kamala Harris, if she's the vice president with Joe Biden as president. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't racism in America, but to say it's in the DNA, it's something that is never going to change and never goes away. I mean, that might be an overstatement, huh? I mean, that's what I wrote in my statement here. I was assigned to write strongly disagree. Racism is not part of America's DNA because racial definitions change. For example, over 100 years ago, Italians and Greeks, Southern Europeans were not considered white. They were not considered white people in the US. Today they are. What about Hispanic people? Hispanic people is a very large group of people. They're 15% of the population is Hispanic or Latin. You're supposed to say Latinx. Latinx means Latino or Latino. But then those include Cuban Americans who left Castro's Cuba after Castro took power in Cuba. They tend to be very, very conservative, very, very Republican, very, very pro-Trump. They also tend to be more, not all, but they also tend to be more light-skinned, at least the original migrants. But there are a lot of people who migrated from Cuba to the United States who are not white-skinned, and they tend to be very, very pro-Trump, very Republican, very anti-Castro, very anti-socialist. And now a lot of people are coming from Venezuela to America, and they are like the Cubans, Cuban Americans, very, very anti-socialist, very, very conservative, very, very pro-Republican, very, very anti-communist, and very much pro-Trump. Those people seem to be becoming white. Ted Cruz, he's Cuban American. Marco Rubio, he's Cuban American, and they're both Republicans. One's a senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. He ran for president against Trump. And Ted Cruz from Texas, he ran for president against Trump. They both lost, of course. I think people would assume that they're white. So racial definitions change over time. How much can they change? Can somebody who's got really dark skin? I mean, there were dark skinned people who were in the Trump administration, like Ben Carson. Ben Carson was the Secretary for Housing and Urban Development. He was a neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon. He was in the Trump administration. Okay, what about the other groups? Missionaries and reformers, Pak Chung-yon. Pak Chung-yon, what did your group decide? Where's Pak? That's you, Pak Chung-yon. Where's Pak Chung-yon?
Sorry, do you hear me?
Pak Chung-yon.
Yes.
Where does your group fit on the scale?
We decided to agree that.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
Because anyway, I think the beginning of the United States was an invasion of Indians, so it cannot be denied that white people play a large role in the construction of the federal states of the United States, and racism has always existed since the beginning of history.
You know, you're going to read in the book, and you're reading now, about how these tensions that were reflected in the Jackson administration, that to keep the South, slave-owning South within the United States meant that their economic interests had to be placated or supported. And the Southern slave-owning interests were always nervous that as the North became more and more economically powerful, that the North was going to use its economic strength to dominate politically the South and impose the Northern mindset, the Northern policies, pro-Northern industrial policies and labor policies on the South to that would threaten the interests and the ascriptive way of life that the Southern interests came to idealize and glorify, right? That the Southern way of life, that, you know, if you're a white man, is pretty good. right? And so you already see this under Andrew Jackson, that these people have to be placated. Now, I'm not saying Jackson was a nice guy. He owned slaves as well in Tennessee, but he wanted to mostly keep the North and the South together. And buying off these interests of the South and making them feel like being in part of the United States was a good thing would continue to be a dominant concern all the way up until the Civil War, when it failed. It finally broke down. So you're going to see the Americans always knew that they're going to move west, right? They began already moving west at the end of the war against the British, when the British withdrew all the way west of the Mississippi and north into Canada. All of the rest of that territory east of the Mississippi was going to belong, or they gave to the American, at least on paper, they agreed that the Americans would take it, could have it, that the British gave up. So the United States always knew that they had to expand, they were going to expand out west. And then, of course, they bought the French territory from the Louisiana Purchase, the French territory that France occupied west of the Mississippi from Napoleon under Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States. He bought Louisiana, and that includes much of what is today's central United States west of the Mississippi River. And so the Americans are expanding out west, but the deal, the compromise that was always enforced was that whenever a new state was added to the United States, a new state, because we have, 50 states now, when a new state that did not allow slavery was added in the North, that a slave-owning state, a pro-slavery state, had to be added in the South. And that would be in order to keep a balance, a political balance of power between the anti-slavery forces and the pro-slavery forces. And that will lead to the occupation of Texas, because lots of these slave-owning interests are moving into northern Mexico. After Mexico broke away from the Spanish Empire in the 1820s, Mexico included much of what is now United States. And groups and settlers with their slaves were moving from the South into northern Mexico to get more land and use their resources to make more money, including slave resources in the next door in the South. And when Mexico attempted to make slavery illegal in Mexico, those white settlers from America that had crossed the border into Texas rebelled because they didn't want their slave interests threatened by the Mexican government. And the United States supported that rebellion, partly because they wanted to add more territory, more slave-owning territory to the United States in order to keep the South placated and happy about being in the United States as the United States continued to expand from east to west. And that's a big topic of controversy today in terms of the 1619 project. And Texas is the strongest base of support for this militant white evangelical outlook, because it was a state that rebelled against Mexico because to protect their slave interests, and then was added to the United States as part of this effort to continue to balance slave and non-slave new states being added to the United States as it expanded all the way to the Pacific Ocean, to California, and Washington, and Oregon. But again, all American students of my generation and even younger were taught to believe that this rebellion by Texas was a great romantic moment in American freedom fighting for liberation and justice to bring, well, American culture and society and political unity out west. Remember the Alamo. The Alamo was a Catholic mission where the rebels against the Mexican army fought the Mexican army and were all killed. And all Americans know about the Alamo, the Alamo. Let me show you this romantic image of that is all American students learn from the time they're children. At least they did when I was a child. Uh-oh. Let me show you. I mean, this is from 1955. So this is before this was challenged in today's discourse, because now there's this big discussion and controversy about teaching the true history of what happened in the Mexican-American War that saw the United States take half of Mexico and add it to the United States. Today, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, California, Texas, Oklahoma, and California. So this is the Alamo Fort that the great American heroes are defending against. So you get the point, right? This is now being challenged by the 1619 Project, and the Texas government is passing laws led by the Republican Party forbidding the discussion of racism as a foundational principle in the history of the Texas Rebellion and the Mexican-American War. But that was, in fact, true, that the rebellion of Texas against the Mexican government was motivated by those groups who didn't want their slave-owning interests to be threatened and decided to therefore secede from Mexico, and the Americans got involved to annex the territory. And so this is, of course, a sensitive topic in Mexican-American relations because, of course, the United States ended up conquering Mexico, but they didn't take all of Mexico. They only took the northern half of it and added it to the United States. So, okay, so let's go back to the exercise. And I want to ask you, I think everybody had a chance to speak on Jackson administration, missionaries, reformers, Cherokee, Black Seminoles, and plantation owners and farmers. So now I need to make another vote. So let me log back in. This thing kicks you out if you don't use it all the time. And vote, add. You are members of Congress. Should and so I'll make this anonymous. So you can vote. You can vote your conscience. I'm not going to ask you to identify yourself. So please, ending date. Second. Okay, so please vote. Let me go back to the save screen. Vote on whether or not should Congress adopt the Indian Removal Act. It's anonymous. It's split 50-50. One person abstains. Anyone else, please vote. Okay, there you see the outcome. I don't think everybody's voted, but it's split 50-50. Yes, 9 yes, 7 no, and 2 abstain, which means it'll pass. It's going to pass. If you haven't voted, now's your last chance. Okay, and then let's make this one identified. So please vote on this. Is racism part of America's political DNA? Please vote. This is not anonymous. So I can give you some participation credit. Okay, so there you see the result. So let's go back to the exercise, and if I can find it here. And what was the final vote? The final vote was close. The House Representative voted 102 to 97 in favor. So that was the vote. It was a close vote, but it voted to pass the Indian Removal Act. Maybe this is a good time to talk about the American Creed. Seymour Martin Lipset is a famous American political scientist who makes the point that America was one country born from the American Revolution, but there are actually two countries born from the American Revolution. Two countries were created by the American Revolution. One was the Canada, and the other one was the United States. The United States is a country that is founded upon what Seymour Martin Lipset calls the American Creed. And I think I have, maybe I don't have it here. The American Creed is American liberalism, right? Liberty, egalitarianism, individualism, populism, and laissez-faire. It's liberalism in the 18th and 19th century meanings. And the American Revolution established this ideology as the dominant ideology of the United States. And people who support Trump, who claim they're not racist, say, we don't have any problem with Black people. We just want everybody, we love everybody who believes this. Small government. Big government is bad. That government should not get involved in deciding what you should do or believe. They're very suspect about the US government being involved in your life, even educating you. That elections determine policy, not experts and bureaucrats, populism. And that there should be limited government involvement in society. And of course, this is going to be a problem with COVID-19 because COVID-19 is not going to be overcome without government leadership. And the biggest source of resistance to the mandates to wear a mask and to get the vaccine are in places like Texas. In the South, the Confederacy, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas in particular, and other places out west, like in the old Mexican territory, Arizona. Okay, but whereas Canada became the home for traditional British conservatism with its class orientation, noblesse oblige, paternalistic socialism, and social democracy. Okay, that's it for today. Anybody have any questions? If not, I will end the show. Bye.